right. It's been far too long. I have reasons, okay? I can't help it. I am a teacher when I'm not doing this. And the school year ended right right as Summer Game Fest was coming along. So I went to Summer Game Fest, and then what happened? Well, Summer Game Fest ended, and then I had to go right back to school to get ready to start summer school, which just wrapped up its first week last week. So I've been really busy. And processing preview videos I'm still behind on from Summer Game Fest. And that is why today's show is a little weird. I'll be talking about Summer Game Fest from 2 weeks ago. I'll try to talk about it in a way that is hopefully interesting, despite being a little late. And we'll also be discussing J. Michael Straczynski returning to the world of Spider-Man. So those are our two main topics for the day. So, Summer Game Fest. Well, if you are not aware, if you're unfamiliar with Summer Game Fest, it's essentially the de facto E3. It has come to supplant what was once the Electronic Entertainment Expo. There's also IGN Live, which goes on at the same time. I don't know. I've been to both. I feel like Summer Game Fest is the closest in terms of setup and feel to what E3 used to be. So when I started working in the industry, it was 2013. I should know these things. I can't remember what my first year at Nintendojo was. Actually, I can do this. I'm going to Nintendojo Power Rangers 3DS review. It was either that or the Pac-Man game was one of my first reviews that I ever did. So yeah, it was 2013. So 12 years ago, I was going to my first E3 in Los Angeles, and that was fun. I think I've probably told this story elsewhere. Remember, I have this podcast and the 7 Minutes podcast, so maybe you've heard me over there. But the way I used to do it is I would take the overnight Amtrak train slash bus down to LA, do the show. I'd get there super early in the morning, wait until it opened, do the show, then reverse it and come right back, all within a 24-hour period. And it was fun. It was easier to do when I was 12 years younger. But it was very entertaining. It felt surreal. Like I run a couple sites. I've been doing games journalism for over a decade now. But prior to all that, I was just an ordinary, everyday fan. And E3 was something that I'd see discussed in like Nintendo Power and other magazines, but it was never something I actually got to go to. And to be there, it was just this incredible feeling. I was fortunate enough to be there right before they started having the public come in. And, that's no offense to the public. It's a different vibe when you start having people off the street coming in compared to being surrounded by industry people. And saw some interesting things at E3. A life-size, the battle bus from Fortnite. Nintendo's booth was always hopping. Like, it was the booth to go to. I don't give a damn which console you have allegiance to. Nintendo's booth was always the booth. Even the year that they didn't have anything to show but Breath of the Wild, they dominated that E3. The line was insane to go try that game. And it was fun because Nintendo would take the booth and would transform it. Now, some years it was less interesting than others, but even the less interesting years, like when they had Smash Bros. On Wii U, they had all these props set up. So, like, you could see, like, a giant King DDD's hammer, if I'm remembering correctly, stuff like that. They had this two-tiered Splatoon area where it was, like, 2 levels and people were sitting and playing each other multiplayer. But the years they went all out, I saw New Donk City. I saw it was a little replica of that chunk of the game world. And then Breath of the Wild was a mini recreation of Hyrule with statues of Link and moblins and all that. Pieces of like wall that you would see exploring the environment. So E3 was super cool, and in the LA Convention Center, it's gigantic. It's right next to Staples Center. I don't care what Staples Center is called at the moment. It's just Staples Center. Whoever's the license holder can go screw themselves. It's just an institution, right? I'm not even a Lakers fan or a Clippers fan. It's just anyway. Convention hall's enormous. It's I'm gonna butcher the shape. In my brain, I think I remember it being like kind of U-shaped, if I'm recalling correctly. So you have sort of a center corridor and then two other exhibition spaces. One exhibition space had, the big guys. It was Nintendo, it was Microsoft, it was Sony. And then the other exhibition hall had the slightly smaller studios, okay? So like maybe Capcom or something was over there. And that's how it was. And you explored, there was food. It was just a really fun time. Now, I've seen articles where journalists try to make these stupid claims about how we don't need E3 anymore. It's an archaic concept. It's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure your ass was at Summer Game Fest eating the same free breakfast that I was enjoying yourself just like I was. Like, cut the bullshit. You get these talking heads who come up with these ridiculous claims. Live events are special, okay? You can create whatever AR experience you want. You can claim that, there's no need for it. I'm sorry, you're just full of shit. It's fun to go to. There is something about an in-person live event that has an energy that is hard to describe, that is immensely engaging. And when you're getting to go one-on-one with people, looking at the games that they're making, talking about the games with them, it's a really great thing. I hope it never goes away. And Summer Game Fest just seems to continue to grow. So in comparison to E3, which is super elaborate, all these giant companies, etc., it's a little smaller, significantly smaller. It's in downtown LA. It's a little off the beaten path. You're in a facility that was clearly like an old, maybe manufacturing facility at some point, which has been, gutted. It's not that anymore. And inside, there are these kind of nice spaces that they've created that they set up televisions, they set up game consoles, couches. Again, there's like a bar, there's a media lounge where you can sit and connect to Wi-Fi and do your work. And there's just endless food and snacks and drinks. It's very, very well done. And this year was, it was more impressive than last year. As somebody who was going there on a budget, I was incredibly appreciative of Jeff Keighley feeding us the way that he did. And that sounds stupid. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not IGN with a budget out my ass or whatever they've got going on, or any of these other bigger sites. I'm there, and I'm grateful for everything that they gave us in terms of support. It's like, it was nice that I didn't have to worry about going to get food. Particularly because it's not in the nicest part of Los Angeles. So you're probably not going to really want to walk around on foot around there anyway. But the fact that you could go in, it's self-contained, they're giving you breakfast, lunch, and then there's food trucks, and you get 3 meal vouchers. So basically, it's like, if you don't want anything that's in the little lounge area, just go outside to go to a food truck, and you get something in there. I say outside, I mean still within the walls of this facility. So, very cool stuff. And yeah, the idea that this is something that's going to leave the industry, you cannot replace the word of mouth that comes from someone that actually sat and was playing the games in person. So I tried a handful of different games while I was there across the 3 days. Among them was Lego Party, okay? Lego Party, completely, like, I glazed over. Saw the announcement during the stage show at SoFi, and I just was like, whatever, another party game. But I sat and played it, and was like, this is actually really good. Like, it's made by people who obviously love Mario Party. The genre just is Mario Party. I'm sorry. It's the pinnacle of the genre. There are few true competitors. This is made by people who obviously love the Mario Party games and know how to make the experience and make it feel right. It looked good, it played well, um, great mini games, and I'm having fun sitting and playing with two of the devs and another game journalist. Like, how does that compare to, somebody making a post on social media? Here is our game, or a digital presentation. Now, I'm talking crap. I like Nintendo Directs, but not everyone's Nintendo, are they? Do you think that if the poor Lego Party dev was going to do their summer broadcast, that anyone would be tuning in the types of numbers that people tune in for, like a State of Play or a Nintendo Direct? No. It doesn't work for everybody. And again, I was not very interested in the game when I saw it at the stage show. I played it and it clicked. And I was like, I'm actually looking forward to this. When it comes out, I'm going to force my family to play it with me so they can see, hey, this is actually pretty good. It's almost as fun, if not as fun, as playing Mario Party. Let's give it a shot. At least the little bit that I got to try. You can't replace that, okay? Believe me, I understood Nintendo's shift. When Nintendo did that first E3, where they said, we're not doing a stage show, we're doing this direct broadcast, it's because you can disseminate information from anywhere, okay? The internet is the great equalizer within most of our lifetimes. It used to be, take sports for example. If you wanted to be a big shot, they would tell you, you got to get to New York. You got to get to either New York or LA, be on one of those teams. That's how you make the big bucks, because you get a bigger contract, you get better exposure in terms of television, and on and on. Now, that's still kind of true to an extent, but really the barrier is gone because you can broadcast from anywhere. You can reach people from anywhere. I always joke that if Nintendo said for that first direct broadcast, Reggie's going to go take a shit at a Circle K bathroom in this city at this time, and he's going to read a list to you through the bathroom stall of the games that are coming out in the next 12 months, every fucking journalist would have been crammed into that smelly bathroom stall, listening to everything he had to say, and they would have disseminated all that information no differently than if he had done it on the Kodak Theater stage. That's how this works in this digital era, is that you can get that information out there. But if you don't have the street cred of a Nintendo, not to mention the fact that the directs are always very well done, they're very well produced, you're still dependent on proper word of mouth. You're still dependent on, hey, we're going to get some journalists into the same room together, get some good energy going, and show off our product. And we'll have our devs on the show floor so you can sit and you can talk to them, you can ask them questions. It's fun. For me, I have fun because I get to pretend I know what I'm talking about a little bit, because I've taught game design. So I can notice things as I'm playing and say, hey, I noticed you did this, or like, this is a good part of the design, and on and on. It's always fun. The developers seem to appreciate hearing that kind of commentary. It's just such a wonderful thing. And then, but here you get some jackass who's like, E3 is dead. No one wants to go here anyway. It's expensive. It's like, oh my god, just like shut the fuck up. I'm so tired of these jackasses who think they have something to say. It's like, no, homie, you haven't stumbled upon some great talking point that nobody figured out. What you haven't figured out is that, yes, everyone still wants to keep showing up for this stuff. And they're going to keep showing up to this stuff as long as they can. I saw, again, so many different people, right? I saw Chris Dring, the head of GamesIndustry.biz. He's running around there. I saw Alyssa Marcante running around. I saw all these different personalities. Ain't nobody turning down going to this event, because everybody likes to be able to go to these events. Let's just be real, okay? If you want to pretend you're too cool for school, that's good for you. I've been doing this again since 2013. I still absolutely appreciate the ability to go to these things. Like, it has not been lost on me, the value of it, the fun of it, and on and on. So that's Summer Game Fest. You're at this facility. It's very handsomely arranged. It feels very professional, and you have a lot of big devs there now. There were big devs there last year. That was my first year going. I don't know if that was the first year of Summer Game Fest, but this year you had Capcom again. You had oh, I saw Mark Cerny, PlayStation executives running around. That was super funny. I looked at him and I said, "Are you who I think you are?" And he goes, "Yes, I am, but I've lost the person that I'm looking for." And then he trailed off and went into a corner. And I just was like, "That's hella funny. That's pretty much what I would expect." um, but yeah, a lot of the big companies are there. And then you see the sponsor list for it or partner list or whatever, and all the big names are attaching themselves. This, I feel like, is just gestating. It's becoming bigger and will keep becoming bigger, I think, as the years go by. I suspect next year it will probably be at that facility it was this year again. But then I think if it grows more, that might be the last year it's there, and then maybe it goes to a bigger venue. It's not ready for uh, the LA Convention Center just yet. It's not that big, not even like remotely. You would maybe be able to fill one hall of the convention center. But the original iteration of E3 was it filled the whole thing. Now, that new event, and it's shameful, I should have Googled it. I'm blanking on it, but it's the replacement for E3 that's coming from, who the heck are they? Not the ESRB. It's the people who run all that. Oh my goodness, let me look. Let's see what it's called. New E3 coming 2026. What's it called? The ESA. Forgive me. So it's being called the Innovation Conference, the Icon Conference. Why are they renaming it? Who knows? It's like, just call it E3, dude. It's like, that's what it is. Okay, and if you get everybody to show up again, that's what it's gonna be. So, regardless, that's coming. Will that overshadow Summer Game Fest? I mean, it's entirely possible. It is, again, it's about the spectacle. So, let's say I don't know, Microsoft, and I have to choose between having a booth set up at the LA Convention Center and Jeff Keighley's former manufacturing facility. I probably choose the LA Convention Center and the ESA, who has, frankly, a little more name cachet. At least that's how I feel. Now, would it be cheaper to do it at Keighley's facility? Probably. So maybe there is a choice to make. I don't know. I'm interested to see what happens next year. But Summer Game Fest, again, I had a lot of fun. I thought it was cool seeing all these different games. I'm just going to kind of quickly run through some of these. My plan is, like, the previews are coming. I don't give a damn how long it takes me to write them. I'm properly previewing all the software that I saw. So, I'll talk to you about Lego Party. Spine was another great game that I got to try. I think the developer's name is Neki or Nekai, something like that. This is their first home console game, and it's like a beat 'em up. It's a Batman Arkham type of beat 'em up with that sort of similar light heavy combo focused combat going on. You have finishers that you can do. It's set in sort of a cyberpunk-ish looking environment. It was a lot of fun, and I would be. I was totally just like, oh, this is your first console game? Doesn't really feel like it. Like, it's pretty well made. It looks good. So that's one I'm going to keep my eyes open for. I did point out to the devs, I was like, when you get to the point where you do your finisher, it's the same buttons over and over. It's just, I can't remember what controller I was using, but in my brain, I keep thinking it was cross square, right? So it's cross square, do your finisher. I'm like, are you going to mix it up? Maybe it's cross circle, maybe it's circle triangle. And he said, yes, that was the plan. I don't know if that really was the plan or if maybe he heard me and was just like, oh yeah, we should probably do that. Too much credit for myself, probably. But I think that they spice it up that way. It'll be good. What else did I get to try? Oh, I'm gonna forget the name of it. It's Pedal something. It's not Pedal Pushers. Let me look this one up. Pedal game looks like Pokemon. And that's selling it short. That's how I'm Googling it, alright? Leave me alone. No, it's not Pal World. There we go. So Pedal Runner. That one, oh, I was having a lot of fun with it. They're labeling it a slice of life game. It's Pokemon esque. You have digital creatures that you're dealing with in the game, but it's beautiful pixel art. It's a two-man team. The color palette in particular, I loved. It was reminiscent of. I don't think he quite knew what I meant when I said this, but maybe it just was how I put it. But when you had a Game Boy Color and even a Game Boy Advance, you throw a Game Boy game in that was not a Game Boy Color game, you would have all the palettes that you could choose from when it would boot up, right? So you have the Game Boy thing, the logo appears on the screen, and you press up, down, left, right, I think maybe button combinations too, and you'd get these different color palettes that would just color the game for the entire time you're playing. Well, their game looks like one of those color palettes, and they were always really kind of interesting. Some games were programmed, uh, like the Game Boy Color itself could detect, oh, you just threw Mario Land 2 in, and would give you a specific default character palette that would kind of color things uh, sensibly. You know, like Mario would be red, for example. Other games, though, weren't programmed for it, and so it would just be kind of a generic color palette that gets thrown in. But even stuff like Mario 2, you could customize it. You know, it's like, well, I could use the default palette, or maybe I'll do this one or do that one. So I love that aspect of Pedal Runner. I thought it was really, really just beautiful looking. And I had fun doing the little tasks. You know, I had these little, they were like fetch quests, but it was entertaining doing them. And you have a little motorcycle that you can roll around on. It was just really good. And it feels like a game that is destined to be on a Nintendo platform at some point. Probably Switch 2. Nothing's confirmed, though. At this point, it's coming to Steam. But, like, I would not be surprised that this ends up getting picked up by others, especially if it stays as good as what I experienced in the demo. There's no combat to speak of. It's pet upkeep. So you have your digital pets that you're taking care of. And in order to do so, imagine kind of like WarioWare microgames, where it's like brush the teeth, and it's like a toothbrush that's going left and right, and you're maybe moving it up and down as it moves left and right, so you hit all the teeth and all the spots on the teeth. Imagine something like that, and that's kind of along the lines of what you're doing with the mini games. One of the mini games was not particularly intuitive, but it was nothing egregious. It was something that, you know, puts a few prompts on the screen and people would get it. So that's one to keep your eyes open for. A couple other ones I saw. This game was, I'm going to butcher the name, Chrysal Theater of Idols. It's a Bloomhouse game. It's a first-person horror adventure set in Spain, and it like mixes folklore and religious themes together. I thought it was kind of interesting looking. You're using your own blood as a weapon. So it's your blood and other fantasy kind of blood and whatever different types of blood that you find throughout the game environment, and you use it to power your weapons. So it's like your own life force is powering the weapons or the life force of other creatures. It had BioShock vibes, and the devs told me that like BioShock was an influence to many of the designers on the team. So that is one worth keeping your eyes open for. It's coming to Steam and PlayStation. I thought it looked really good. It's Vermilla Studios. Lumines Arise. Oh man, Lumines is a personal favorite. Like, I love that series. To me, the only puzzle game that is at the exact same level as Tetris, as far as I'm concerned, is Lumines. It's part music based. So you have falling blocks. There is the timeline that goes across the screen. So what happens is you're making combinations of four colors or four patterns of, you know, they have to match, right? The blocks are little 2x2 blocks. You can rotate them to make the patterns or colors link up, right? Well, once you've made that matching set, you can drop another two blocks on top and you keep chaining. So you go from four of the same kind, maybe it's six, well, maybe it's eight, maybe it's 12. You just keep linking it, right? Well, they don't disappear until the timeline has swept across the screen. And the timeline is usually in sync with the music. So maybe sometimes the timeline's going really quickly. Maybe other times it's going slowly. And there's different positive and negatives that you have from each, you know? So it's like, well, if it goes more slowly, I can chain together more combos. But then that means it's stacking up and I could hit the ceiling and game over. If it goes too quickly, that means cool, the blocks go away faster, but it makes it harder for me to form chains. So that was all intact for this new one. However, there is a meter. And let's see, it's called Burst. Okay, so you have burst power that you build up. So this is from the same team that did Tetris Effect Connected. Tetris Effect incorporated more music into the gameplay in a like kind of in your face way than Tetris typically does, and then the trippy visuals, right? But all of that is just like that's what Luminous already kind of is. So to me, it's a more natural fit to have this theme going with Luminous in Arise, and then that includes how in Tetris Effect, what the heck was it called? I'm looking at my notes. Oh, I'm worthless. Sorry, guys. I'm forgetting what it's called in Tetris Effect. Here it's called Burst. Tetris Effect, it would freeze, and again, you can like form chains. You're frozen the gameplay. You're dropping the Tetraminos. You're making it just build this chain, and you get this great combo score. Same kind of idea here for Luminous. You freeze it with Burst, and then you're able to create more chains. And it's based on, I think, like the first chain you do, because there's 2 colors or patterns with each stage that you play. So in this, I think the dev told me basically whatever the first combo you make, like let's say it's red and blue, if you started with red, then that is going to be the primary combo builder. And then the other one, you'll see like the blocks just sort of dropping. Really great. And great music choices, excellent visuals. There was like this trippy thing with like a big lizard on the screen. The first stage was like the silhouette of somebody like walking away from you, and the action's kind of going on in there. I loved it. I thought Arise is showing a ton of promise, and I cannot wait to play it. That mechanic in Tetris Effect is called Zone. Yes, I paused recording to look that up because it was driving me nuts. All right, what else did I get to actually sample? Moonlighter 2? Man, I feel bad. I played the first Moonlighter, but not like religiously. And so I was really enjoying the sequel, but I'd like to be able to compare it more to what the first one had going on. Visually, looked very nice. Essentially, you go into areas where you're like building up inventory, and then you go back to your shop and you sell the inventory. And there is different things you can do mechanically to boost sales in your shop. That was the one area where I was like a little, like I'm not totally getting how this works, because there's one item that you can use to boost the cost of what you're selling. But then there was another item that like it did something else. I'm forgetting. Like one was boost the price. The other was like, I think it was something percentage based. All I know is it didn't seem like there was anything you really did to make the person you're selling to want what you're selling. It was just sort of like they just would say yes after a certain point. So it felt like, well, if I'm really trying to barter, it doesn't really feel like I'm bartering. Like, is there a way I can pick the wrong buff for what I'm selling, and because I did that, I lose the sale? I wasn't totally sure. So I do think it was fun, but there's room for improvement maybe, but I will judge more when I play the real thing when it comes out, I guess. Marvel Cosmic Invasion, that was really good. That's from the same team that did Shredder's Revenge, okay, so Ninja Turtles. So it has a pixel art style. It's a beat 'em up. It's a brawler. But the mechanics are different, okay? Now, I do think that in Shredder's Revenge, the, like, insane suite of attacks that you have, like, it's something else, man. Like, you can do so many different things in Shredder's Revenge. It's like I can slide and hit an enemy. I can dash and charge into an enemy. I can grab an enemy and slam them. I can grab an enemy and throw them. I can grab an enemy and hurl them at the screen. I can do a rising kick. I can do a downward kick. Just like on and on and on, right? And then your special attacks. This game doesn't quite have that level of variety. However, it is doing its own thing, and it does it well enough that I think it's worthwhile. So it is heavily drawing from like old beat 'em ups of the Marvel characters from back in the day. So you see some of the X-Men game in there from the 90s or whatever. Um, and other titles, but you're also seeing like the Marvel vs. Capcom games influencing here in terms of sort of like how the characters look and attack. So that in and of itself is pretty cool because like I don't know about anyone else, but like I would play Marvel vs. Capcom and just think it'd be really cool to be doing like a beat 'em up where I'm doing these attacks and like beating the crap out of everybody. And you get a little bit of that in like X-Men. God, it's the X-Men Apocalypse game that's on X-Men Mutant Apocalypse on Super Nintendo. That has very similar looking sprites to the Marvel vs. Capcom games, and even some of the moves match what you're doing in that fighter, but in that brawler. So this is sort of extrapolating upon that times 1,000. And I was really loving it. And you even have the ability to swap in and out a second character. So if you think of Marvel vs. Capcom 2, where it's like, oh, you know, I have my team and I can swap in one of my other characters, but I could also just press a button and they come, swinging out and just do a quick attack, right? Same thing here. Really cool. There was some good nerdy attention to detail. Mary Jane's secret hospital is advertised like behind you in the New York stage that we played. I was like, oh man, that's pretty funny. Like, you have to actually know the comics a little bit to know Secret Hospital, at least as far as I know. I don't know if it's in a recent show or something, but that was a nice throwback. The characters look cool. I appreciated that we have Wolverine, and I think he's in his brown costume, if I'm remembering right. Remembering. But some of the other characters are just like, oh, okay, you know, like we got Rocket Raccoon and She-Hulk were like the big reveal at the stage show. Which, by the way, that's another aspect of Game Fest that's pretty cool, is that you're at the YouTube theater in SoFi Stadium. Really adds some kind of gravitas to the proceedings. Probably butchering that word too. I can't talk tonight. All right, leave me alone. It's 1:15 in the morning. Anyway, She-Hulk and Rocket were the big character reveals. I'm like, I don't really care. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not really interested in fighting as either of those characters. I will fight as the Hulk though. That's cool. Spidey, Cap. It's like, just give me the greatest hits of characters. These ones, not so much. See, that's the problem, is the MCU stink doesn't go away when it comes to these projects. You know, you got some douchebag at Disney who's like, well, I mean, you can have Captain America, but, you know, we also have to have some of our cinematic heroes in there. So, you know, Rocket Raccoon, and then the characters no one gives a shit about, even though their shows suck, like She-Hulk. We're gonna put her in there, too. Now, I say that as someone who likes real She-Hulk, okay? Give me She-Hulk from the comics, and I'd be happy. And when I say comics, pre-2016, okay? Anyway, the roster is my one kinda hang-up here, is what I'm long-windedly getting at. But it was fun. I enjoyed Cosmic Invasion. We have Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, pixel art, 2D, great combat. You know, very fluid. It's reminiscent of the original Ninja Gaidens, which, if you've played those titles on NES, those games, you're moving left to right. Ryu swings his sword, one hit, enemies are dead. More or less, that's what's happening here. There are some enemies that require more than one hit to take down, which is good for like variety. But a lot of the enemies just go down with a swing. So that kind of charging forward feel that Ryu has, the main character here has as well. Now, what is that character's name? Kenji. So Kenji is your player character in this game. Ryu is there, but he's more like a mentor, and then he's called away, and so Kenji's kind of left to take care of business in Japan. It's looking really good. You know, like the graphics are very, very well done. Like, you know, I'm a sucker for pixel graphics in general, but These are very well done pixel graphics. You can do crappy pixel graphics. These are not. The art here is wonderful. The gameplay was fun. There was some good changes to the gameplay compared to the original. There's a little bit more of a sense of agility with things that you can do. You can do this sort of, it's almost like a double jump, but it's dependent on you doing an attack to bounce off of an enemy. So you can't just double jump. You have to leap, do this spinning attack, hit the enemy, and then it launches you up again. And there's a lot of possibilities there. So that was awesome, and I absolutely can't wait to play Ragebound. However, and man, I feel bad saying this, I don't mean it the way it sounds, but freaking, not Strider, what is the name? Shinobi. Shinobi knocked my socks off, okay? It sound like an old man talking there, but there is just no other way to put it, okay? Shinobi Act of Vengeance was fantastic. It's from the Streets of Rage team. So you just have the really gorgeous graphic style where it looks like a freaking comic book come to life. Except this is not so much comic book. You have to just see it. You know, it's very graphic, meaning, you know, it looks hand drawn, but in this wonderful stylized way. It's super fluid. Here, the combat is way more nuanced than what you can do in Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. You have all these different abilities. It's like 3 different tiers of ninja abilities that you can do, and different gauges that build up. Now, might that get confusing? I was having a little bit of trouble just like keeping it all straight in my head. I'm like, oh wait, so there's ninjutsu, and then ninpo, and then there's a third one. But in terms of combat, it all made sense as I was going along. And I was just like ripping through bad guys and doing these midair dashes. It was excellent. I did not want to stop playing. Sega really impressed with that one. Another one that I got to try was Sonic Racing Cross Worlds. It's really good. You might recall there was Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing Transformed, okay? That's the last one before Team Sonic Racing, I'm pretty sure. I was looking this up the other day. For some reason, I thought there were more of these games, but I guess this is only going to be the 4th in terms of recent history, right? And I mean, semi-recent? You know, we're going back to older consoles here for Team Sonic Racing, but, forgive me, Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, jeez. I loved those first 2, but the second one in particular, where you have, you know, the transition from land to sea to air, and it's seamless. I believe, I might be wrong on this, but I'm almost positive that when Mario Kart 7 came out, it was around the time that Racing Transformed came out, and I think the devs were just kind of like, they're doing the same damn thing we're doing. You can do 3 different things. But I'm telling you, man, that Sonic game handled it so well, and you had the great cast of Sega characters. I was talking to my friend, and I was telling her, I just don't understand. Why did they drop the roster? Like, when they went to Team Sonic Racing, it was just the Sonic characters. Now we're coming back to Cross Worlds, which is adopting that sort of trifecta of land, sea, air, and you just seamlessly go between them. But the roster is now like some Sega people and then a bunch of guest stars. And she's like, well, it's because nobody knew any of these Sega characters. And I'm like, well, I know who they were, but whatever. It was great. It was, I've used that word too much. I apologize. I will try to dig into the thesaurus, but it was very well done. It looks gorgeous, very fluid, just beautiful visuals. Now, that's saying that, knowing that Racing Transformed was also a beautiful game. It's been a while since that one came out, but damn, like, it looked good, and it still looks good, but somehow Crossworlds does take it to the next level. It's some of the water effects, man. One of the previews I put up has Jet the Hawk, and he's floating over just this beautiful little body of water as he's racing. That game, I was having a lot of fun with that one. So, like, when you're doing demos, you know, if you've never experienced anything like this, they're very controlled. You know, the designers The dev teams are giving you a chunk of something that they've built. And in many cases, they're not done building the whole thing. It's just, this is the part we've got working that we feel confident showing off. Now, Sonic Racing, I suspect it's probably like super close to just being done. So, because I was going through the Grand Prix and there wasn't really any restrictions. When you're doing these demos, sometimes it feels very guided. It feels very, especially if it, like a dev is just sitting there watching you the whole time. Other times though, like with Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, I'm just like, it's like I'm just in my living room playing. Like I wanted to just keep going. I was getting really into it. And I was like, all right, I've got this cup down, this cup down. I think I got through 3 of them, and I just wanted to go. Like I just wanted to keep playing. To me, that's the best vote of confidence I can give a title. Is I didn't even really think about the fact I was doing a demo anymore. It just felt like I was playing. It was great. That's a PS3 360 era game, which is like, it's just hard to imagine how long ago some of this stuff came out. But I think those are the main highlights. Now, there's 2 that I did not get to play, but I got to sit and watch. One was Onimusha. I don't want to downplay it. I'm not going to focus on it as much, but that game looks damn good. I think it's Way of the Sword, if I'm remembering correctly. Look again at my notes. Let's give everything their proper due. So yes, Onimusha, Way of the Sword. It's gorgeous. It's got this sort of haunting, I hate to just pigeonhole it as like being like Resident Evil, but that's the vibe it gave me. Because you're in this haunted ancient Japan setting. You're going through a temple. I was laughing because they were talking about this temple. It's a real world temple. They consulted with the people who still maintain this temple, and on, right? Like for accuracy, I'm like, oh, everything Ubisoft kind of didn't do for Assassin's Creed Shadows. Ubisoft's dev team was just like, I saw it in One Piece once, and I was like, I want to put it in a game now. Let me Wikipedia Japan and combine that with my anime knowledge, and that'll be a good enough version of Japan, is sort of how that game worked out. And then I've got Capcom over here, and they're just like, yeah, we talked to the people who actually, they take care of the temples still. It's like, I think that's how you're supposed to do it. And no, it's not just because they're a Japanese developer, right? I mean, you look at Ghost of Tsushima, right? It's like, that's a Western dev, and the people of Japan made them like honorary ambassadors or whatever it was. Like, you can do it right. It's, just take some effort. Anyway, looked really good. You have like this, I think it's the Oni Gauntlet is what they're calling it. It's like this demon gauntlet. You absorb souls with it. You can charge up your health. You can charge up your XP, and on and on. You have a rival that you run into. And the dev is showing us this. So this one we didn't go hands-on with. It was Capcom in a little theater showing us all of this. And I thought it was very funny. It was like a not-so-humble brag. The dev is playing, and it looks like you have a full 360-degree camera that you can control with the right stick, like most third-person action games have. This dude knew what path he'd be going down. So instead of repositioning the camera, he was just walking knowing, I'll turn here, turn there. I don't need to move the camera. I know where I'm going without even having to really see it. Very impressive. And did a pretty good job during combat. So Onimusha, it looks wonderful. I absolutely think that you should be playing that when it comes out. Incredible art direction. Some of the monster designs, I just was like, wow, like this is really, really, really good. But the showstopper was Resident Evil 9. So Requiem, okay? Now, when the stage show was happening, I was having a nerd moment because I'm like, I don't think anyone's realizing they're about to show us, like, this is Resident Evil. That's what this trailer is. Because they had teased it twice. You had the big vampire lady, I forget the character's name, but the voice actress was like, there and teasing, and then you had somebody from Capcom saying, oh, we're going to give you news soon about Resident Evil 9, next Resident Evil saga, whatever they said. Well, here comes the final trailer, and they referred to Grace Ashcroft, and I'm like, Ashcroft? I'm like, that's a Resident Evil name. And I had my laptop with me in the theater. I'm just like, oh, well, here goes Resident Evil 9. I just need to hear what it is. So I had my post on X ready to go, and I'm just waiting to hear it. I'm like, does anyone else realize, like, this is Resident Evil? Don't you know what you're looking at? But eventually, yes, they announced it was Resident Evil 9. So we got to see it, all right? So I am going to describe to you what I saw, and I'm sure others have already done this, but, you know, it's coming from me. You get to have my colorful commentary. So you begin in the oh man, hold on, give me 1 second. I know I'm terrible, I can't remember anything. So the setting is the Wrenwood Hotel. Now, it didn't look like a hotel per se as I'm watching this demo. Maybe it is. I got hospital vibes, especially from some of the furnishings that I saw laying around. And you're in what looks like kind of the front desk nurse station area of a hospital at one point. But whatever, I guess you're in the hotel. Maybe it's not. They never specified in the demo. But Grace, who's the main character, her mother is from the Resident Evil Outbreak games. I don't know if she's just in the first or the second or both. But Ashcroft is also mentioned in Resident Evil lore. I was talking with my sister about this. I feel like Ashcroft is multiple times mentioned throughout Resident Evil. I will research this. Maybe I'll mention it next time. But anyway, again, I know that name. She's got some history here. But Grace herself was like a former investigative journalist, I believe. And she was looking into Raccoon City and Umbrella before, the city's blown up. And now she's working with like a law enforcement agency, and she's been sent to look into the hotel, and that's where her mother was killed. So Grace is suspended upside down from like a gurney. There's an IV in her arm, and blood's dripping out into a vial. Well, she smashes this flask and is using the glass to cut herself free. She has to rock herself to get the gurney to fall over so she can undo her feet, and now she's up. Now, everything's being shown from a first-person perspective, which, big spoiler, everybody knows this already, but you can switch between first and third person however you want to play the game. It's apparently designed with first person in mind primarily, but the game is made to support both right from the get-go, which is nice because there's people like my brother-in-law who hate the first-person perspective. They'd rather be third person. But the demo was first person, and you get no real combat, okay? But it does give you the feel of the game, and it was scary as shit. I will freely admit I'm a wimp with this stuff. I'm like, wow, this is really unnerving. I'm just sitting in the crowd, and I'm waiting for something horrible to happen, and I kind of don't want it to. In a good way. So she's creeping through. It's very Resident Evil. It's a hyper-realistic environment. It's beautifully rendered. I was very impressed. And the depth of shadows was really well done. There's entire corridors where it's pitch blackness. And at one point she gets like a lighter that she's using for illumination. And that's it. So it's creepy in that you don't know what you might see as you round the corner. But the big jump scare in the demo is Grace gets to a door. She opens it, and this rotting scientist doctor corpse comes falling through. Now, she, of course, checks his pulse, even though he looks like, bad sandwich meat that you've had in your fridge for a month. Checks his pulse. Yes, he's dead. So she's looking at him, all right? And then here comes this giant-ass arm, all right? This big, pale fucking appendage slowly creeps into the shot, grabs the body and drags it slowly, and then she looks up, Grace looks up, and it's this big deformed monster woman who starts chomping on the corpse like food. She's eating it, right? She bites his head off. Oh, so nasty and unnerving. So she, of course, is now being chased by this thing. Now, we didn't get any details. We were just shown this footage. So these are my impressions, right? I got the vibe that maybe she's the nemesis type enemy in this game, that she's just going to sort of show up. She is portrayed as using the ceiling to get in and out of rooms. Like she'll burrow up through a floor and then come back down. She has trouble getting through doorways, so that's one way of kind of slowing her. But they never showed you how Grace escapes these encounters. So is she throwing things? Is she hitting the monster? Does she have a gun, a knife? I'm sure she has something. It's Resident Evil, but they didn't show any of that. They just would show the creature appear and then disappear. Now, in terms of puzzles, classic Resident Evil puzzles going on. There's a fuse box. Oh, look, you need the fuse. Oh, guess what? You need a screwdriver. You find a toolbox that has the screwdriver. Keys for elaborately carved doors, and on and on. All that was great. Like, these are things that you want in a Resident Evil game. They're present, looking fantastic. The demo ends where you get everything you need to get that fuse, which is preventing you from accessing a doorway. It's like a metal grate. It ends with you getting through the grate, but it cuts to black, and you can hear that the monster woman is like right on your heels. You don't know what's happening, and then it ends. And then after that is when they did the big, oh, you can either do first or third person reveal, which I totally appreciate. That was cool. 9 looks like it's going to be pretty cool. I will say this, though. I've heard talk of like it's a reinvention of the series, and it's a this and it's a that. It's like, look, like you guys already have, I don't know how many times tried to tell us we're moving past Umbrella, we're going into new territory. That's what 7 was, right? Like you had the new guy, and it seemed to be unrelated to anything from before, and then before you know, Chris Redfield's showing up again. It's like Capcom keeps trying to pivot away from these classic elements of the series and then goes right back to them. I don't know what the point of that is. It's sort of like Microsoft and Halo with Master Chief. Why is there this like obsession with certain parts of either the, I don't know, gaming community or game journalists? Why is there this like idea that we need to move on from Master Chief? Bro, I love Master Chief. That is Halo, okay? It's like Star Wars. Star Wars is fucking Luke Skywalker, alright? I'm sorry to break it to you. It's Han, Luke, Leia, Vader, Lando. It's all those core characters. Now, if you like the expanded universe, God bless you. There's some of the expanded universe I love. But to the majority of fucking human beings, Star Wars is those elements. Just embrace it, okay? Embrace it until everyone is just like, yes, I am officially done. I will not interact anymore. That's the best you can hope for. Now, yeah, can you mix other things in and it works sometimes? Sure. But at the end of the day, I play Halo, I want Master Chief. I play Metroid, I want Samus. If I'm playing Resident Evil, no, I don't care if Umbrella is still involved. I don't care if I see Wesker. I don't care if Chris Redfield is there, Leon S. Kennedy, on and on and on. These are great things. That's why I like the series. You can keep adding to it, but don't act like we need to go away or reinvent. It's like, who are you fooling here, dude? You're just going to end up going back to it anyway, just like you did after 7. So, why? I don't get it. Thou doth protest too much. But, alright, I think that's the capper for Summer Game Fest. At least my experience there. This next part, okay, I have been wanting to vent about it for like 2 or 3 weeks now. It involves the LA riots, okay? I am not going to name this creator. I will say that this person is relatively famous within the video game world. They went from like cosplayer to now they actually work in the industry, and I guess now they act in the industry, all right? My impression, I mean, I'm not really going to say what my impression is. I don't really pay that much attention to this person. But I can tell you for a fact, the riots were a thing, okay? They were disruptive. In my hotel, I got home, and it was the second or third night. I think it was the second night, all right? And I go into my room, and I could see that there was commotion. Like, there was stuff going on the street. and you could hear it. But when I got to my room, I looked down and like I could see all these cops lined up through the intersection. They were blocking off parts of the intersection. Traffic's rolling by them. I look down further another block and there goes the cops again, okay? So I go to get some ice. I'm gone maybe 2 minutes and I had been staring out the window for a little bit just watching all this, right? I come back with my ice and there's a flaming dumpster in the middle of the intersection now. Where it came from, I don't know. But I'm watching this shit unfold. And then at one point, there's this secluded little plaza below the hotel that's right outside of where the restaurant for the hotel is. And I can see that people are like hiding down there. So they're like watching what's happening, sneaking in and out. At one point, people from that little nook are throwing explosives at the police. You can see the sparks. You can see the explosions going off, right? Some of it's fireworks. If you have any kind of consciousness of like the ghetto or the hood, some of those fireworks, quote unquote, like an M1000, it's just dynamite. Different levels of dynamite, but that's all it is. It just goes boom, okay? And that's what these guys are throwing at the cops. So this is like real shit happening downtown. When I went to go eat, when I got back to the hotel, I'm in the hotel restaurant, and I'm feeling a little guilty because like the workers are watching all this shit going on the screen, and they're going to have to go home, you know, later on, probably after 10 o'clock, maybe closer to 11, with all of this madness going on. Now, I'm not saying one thing one way or the other about why people were there and rioting and protesting. That's not my thing here. I'm talking about just the human effect of it, right? Well, here comes Game Personality. And on their social media, they're talking about how, well, I didn't really see any of what people talking about. They're saying LA's out of control. I'm not seeing that. And I live in downtown LA and blah, 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 blah. And I'm just looking and I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? I'm right here. Like, you can bullshit other people with your stupid social media post. I am here looking at this. The rioting is right outside of my hotel window, and I am in downtown LA. So I don't know what secluded, sheltered, affluent bubble you're living in. Or maybe you're just full of shit. I'm not really sure. And so the next day, this person posts saying, well, because clearly they were getting a bunch of flack from users on social media saying, yeah, there was rioting. They were saying that it was basically being overplayed. Yes, but I went out to a lovely dinner and I didn't see any of this. It's like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. What's the magical threshold that was supposed to be reached in terms of violence, property damage, and on and on? What was the threshold that it should have hit that people could be saying, yeah, this is out of control, this isn't okay, it's very dangerous, on and on and on? I'd love to know what that threshold was. Because I felt like it was hit that night, okay? You're throwing explosives and shit at police. You're lighting dumpsters on fire, and on and on and on. Yeah, that's a problem, dude. Okay? I get it. You know, you live with your head up your ass because you make a lot of money working in the industry. God bless you. That's good. But you are not part of the real world, okay? I'm sorry, you're just not. This same person would go on to talk about how they had accidentally ordered something very expensive at a restaurant. Teehee. It was too late, so I got it. It's like, yeah, all of this speaks to someone living a fantasy life, okay? You know what I was doing with my money when I was in LA and I was going to Summer Game Fest? I was counting every penny because the transition from end of school year to summer school creates chaos in terms of my pay as a teacher. So I'm having to be careful with my money and pay attention to what I'm ordering and on and on. This person has so much security in their life that they can just order something by accident that's super expensive. I'm sorry if I don't take your judgment on the rioting very seriously. But see, what is insidious about this to me is that this person's talking about it, and to me, what they're doing, if they're not if they're not just blatantly ignorant, it's willfully trying to paint a prettier picture because they don't like the politics of what's happening. So because people are doing bad things, they want to try to mask it in any way they can by downplaying the situation and basically saying, oh, a bunch of alarmists were telling you that there was rioting going on. It wasn't that bad. It's like, no, it was. You're full of shit, okay? I took Uber rides to and from my hotel to the venue. You know how many fellow fucking Latinos I talk to? Lest ye have forgotten, I'm Mexican, okay? So I'm well aware of what's going on with these riots, as are many of the people I'm interacting with. People that this person, again, in the industry, probably barely fucking even acknowledges or thinks of as they're getting Ubered around town, probably constantly. I'm talking to these people, and I'm listening to people who are talking about their own situations with being documented versus undocumented, fears for family members. I spoke with a woman who was a single mother, and she was saying how she sympathized with the protesters, but that she thought that the rioting was wrong. She was fucking Mexican, okay? And she's not happy because she's out there working. She's on the street. She has to worry about her safety. And this fuckwad who's in the industry with their head up their ass is telling you how hunky-dory everything is because the message, because wrong side of history, because every talking point I have comes from Reddit and TikTok. It is so sickening, and it pissed me off to no end. It's like, no, you listen up, pal. It's like, you're not even fucking from here. You know, you're the typical fucking, I came from wherever, moved to LA, and I'm gonna tell you how it is. It's like, no, you're not gonna tell anybody how it is, okay? It's like, you know, the people here, like this woman that I'm talking to, have history here, have blood here. My own family in the Bay Area, we're here for like, you know, centuries, okay? You know, native blood. That's how long my family has been in California. And I got this genius telling everyone how great it was. So, no, the riots sucked. It was frightening to see unfold, and you worried for people. Okay? So that's my 2 cents on that situation as it related to my time down there during Summer Game Fest. And as far as I'm concerned, that person can go fuck themselves with their bullshit analysis. And then right back to social media, look at me eating at nice restaurants and going to events and doing this and doing that. It's like, yeah, you know a lot about what's going on the streets. You're very fucking in tune. I'm impressed. Note my sarcasm. All right. So, that was Summer Game Fest. Now let's move on to topic 2. We're going to talk Spider-Man. So, a couple things with Spidey. Specifically, comic book Spider-Man, okay? Now, the first thing I wanted to discuss is Wes from Thinking Critical, it's one of those knows a guy types of situations. So he knows someone, or maybe knows someone who knows someone at Penguin Random House. That is Marvel Comics distributor, okay? And he was getting actual sales numbers for comics that were being sold to the shops. And he's saying that the person he spoke with told him that Amazing Spider-Man is sub 50,000 units per month. It was like 48,000 units and change. That's crazy. Amazing is one of Marvel's like premier titles. I think it's the flagship title for Marvel. Especially, you know, since X-Men has fallen off. Amazing Spidey is like it. Like for DC it's Batman. For Marvel it's Spidey. To be nowhere near sniffing distance of 100,000 units is insanity. If that number is real, that's pretty damn awful to hear. But when you look at the state of the comics, what else do you expect? You know, it's like, I like Joe Kelly. I think Joe Kelly does a decent job, but then I'm reading issue 1 of the Amazing relaunch, and Peter's a fucking cuck. I don't know how else you can put it. Shay's sitting there saying, we're not exclusive. I'm not going to say you're exclusive. It's like, okay. Is this some weird-ass open relationship bullshit? Like, I don't get it. And why Peter would put up with it, I'd be like, oh, we're not? Okay, it was nice knowing you. Fuck off. But this is what they've been doing with Peter for years now. And, you know, whether it's identity politics bullshit, if it's just, I mean, I don't even know what fuels it in terms of like this. It's just, it's nonsense. It's like, oh, is the way to sneak in the message is that Peter's in a non-traditional relationship now because instead of being a monogamous couple, it's like, you know, she's going to go off and do what she wants with other people. And, you know, if Peter wants to fool around with Black Cat, it's okay because we've given each other the green light. Like, I'm not interested in this weird shit in my comics, okay? It's like the world of pornographic delight and what is in my Spider-Man comic don't need to overlap. I don't need the Venn diagram there, okay? That Venn diagram where they meet in the center is just an anus, and I don't need that in my comics, okay? It's stupid. And maybe that's why you're sub 100,000 copies for Spider-Man, because you're pulling this bullshit. It continues to be Nick Lowe, you know, main editor in charge of the Spider-Man books. I don't like what Nick Lowe's been doing for many, many years now. But more to the point, he acts like a dick to the fans. It's this antagonistic, oh, it's only the chuds, the ists, the phobes that don't like XYZ. It's like, bro, you make product for consumers. You don't just make art, you make commercial art. Commercial art gets sold at scale, okay? There's a fucking movie empire predicated upon this character, all right? Like, let's not pretend you're making some art house thing, some random indie book that somebody stapled in their living room, all right? Like, you are making Spider-Man. And the fans continue to say, this is dog shit. Why do you keep doing them dirty like this? Why are you doing us dirty like this? We don't want this. And, you know, the defense seems to have been, well, it sells. It sells. You guys are saying you don't like it, but it sells. It's like, yeah, apparently it sells 48,000 fucking units, which ain't shit. I mean, if Spidey's selling 48,000, what is, like, you know, what's Captain America selling? 20,000? I mean, how low are these numbers? Now, there's direct to consumer sales still. All right. Now, take that with a grain of salt. I must admit, I'm being naughty. I didn't Google this. I didn't look it up on my own. But listening to the Thinking Critical crew, they claim, I believe it was Doc, you can go online and you can still have comics actually mailed to your house if you want. I used to have that happen when I was a kid. My grandma was like, how many copies? I think it was like 4 different books my grandma was having sent to the house. I remember my dad was not happy. He was like, you just need to be getting every comic every month. But that went on for a little while. It was fun. Apparently, you can still do this. I actually might kind of look into this. It'd be kind of neat to see how they do it. Segue here. You would get these kind of cool boards that would come in the comic. So it was shrink wrapped and it had a backing in it. And the backing was like something that would just come with these mailed comics. I still have a couple of them. Man, I think one had like maybe the Spider-Man animated series Spidey on them. They were cool. Anyway. So, these numbers are not good. And then you've got flippant jackassery coming on from editorial. I'm at kind of a loss here. It's like, all of these comics, can we just get back to the most familiar versions of them, please? Like, at this point, I'm sorry, if you're like someone who's been reading for 40, 50 years or something, and you're like, I'm so done with Peter Parker and the Daily Bugle and J. Jonah Jameson and the Green Goblin, it's like, that's nice, no one gives a fuck. I wouldn't mind seeing that. And I've been reading for 30 years. Okay, a little longer probably. I've probably been reading, I'm 39 now, good God. But I guess that means probably 35 to 36 years. Now, 35 is about fair. I read from a very young age, but 35 about years reading comic books. And I would not complain if Peter was working at the Daily Bugle, is a photographer, Jonah's the publisher, Robbie is his second in command, you have shenanigans with the Green Goblin, and on and on and on. If you got Peter Parker back to that, I think it would be absolutely fine. And again, I will for the millionth time go back to Jeff Loeb. I think he's right when he talks about give people what they're familiar with these characters. He used the Supergirl comparison. It's Peter David is writing. She's part angel, part ectoplasmic being or alien, whatever it was, all right? And I know people love that run. But if you want to explain Supergirl to a person on the street, the easiest way is, oh, that's Superman's cousin. Or, like Loeb said, worst case scenario, that's Superman's little sister. Close enough. We are so far from that in comic books now, it's just kind of mind-numbing to me. Who are we satisfying with this? Especially because, as I've pointed out, every time this character is adapted in other mediums, in anthologies, books, cartoons, it's the same setup. It's Peter, it's the Bugle, it's Mary Jane. That's what everybody knows and expects from Spider-Man. But when you go to his monthly comic, they're like, fuck you, you don't get to have that. Dumb, okay? Now, J. Michael Straczynski is apparently coming back to the character. It is not ASM. He is coming back for a limited series, so it's called Spider-Man Torn. Now, I will be honest. I would say I like 90% of JMS's Spider-Man run. If you disagree with me, you're probably just going to say, like, One More Day. Let's be clear about something. He was not happy with One More Day. I am not trying to just blindly defend JMS, okay? But the way I understand the story is that when they sat and they hammered out what was going to happen in One More Day, Joe Quesada was very heavily involved. Remember, Joe Quesada drew One More Day. This was his baby. He had certain things he wanted to take care of as editor-in-chief. Remember, the mutants going down to 198. Remember, the X-Men were like sub 200 mutants after House of M? Well, that was part of Joe Quesada saying, we have too many mutants, make it special again, reduce the number, okay? Now, eventually, that went away, but that was one of his goals. Well, Spider-Man was, I want to undo the marriage. Because for Joe Quesada, his Spider-Man was the days of, like, Gwen Stacy, was the days of Peter Parker having women trouble and being, broke and on and on and on. So he wanted to get back to that. Now, the mentality was, oh, the marriage ages the character, and just all these kind of bullshitty reasons, okay, that led us to One More Day. So they're hammering out the story, and JMS apparently was not pleased with the direction. So, right or wrong, fans associate JMS with One More Day, but it technically was not, it really wasn't him. He has gone on record, again, my understanding, this is stuff I've read a long time ago, this is stuff I recently looked at just to kind of verify that I'm not misremembering. He wanted his name taken off of the final issues of One More Day, because it was basically just Quesada. And Straczynski's like, I don't want to end the marriage. I don't really like what we're doing here. I don't want my name on this. And I believe that they obliged him. I own these issues still. Maybe I'll dig them up just to verify. And I don't know about the reprints. But all I know is JMS, at least at the time, was not happy with One More Day. Did not want anything to do with it. Now, sins past. You want to hate him for that? I don't blame you, okay? In case you don't know, Sins Past is where you found out that Gwen Stacy and Norman Osborn were boinking behind Peter's back and that she gave birth to twins. Yes, that was an actual comic that got published and totally wasted great Mike Deodato art, okay? Mike Deodato Jr. Anyway, so JMS is coming back, and now one of the things I wanted to comment on, and, hopefully I don't piss anybody off by saying this, specifically the people that I'm talking about. But sometimes when I'm listening to shows like Thinking Critical, or I'm listening to like Gary under Drotic, I get a little unhappy when there's like continuity error type of stuff, like not knowing stories and lore. or having like really kind of off memories. So when I heard Wes talking about JMS coming back, he's saying how John Romita Jr. drew Back in Black. I'm like, no. I'm like, that's the last story that JMS wrote before One More Day. And it's a pretty good story with some incredible Ron Garney art, okay? Romita Jr. did from issue 30 of, volume 2 of ASM, issue 30 forward. I think like issue 507, because they go back to the classic numbering at issue 500. There's a lot of great stuff in there. Ezekiel is introduced, Moreland is introduced. You have the Spider Totem stuff. You have Shathra. You have Peter and MJ reuniting, because remember, they had tried to end the marriage by killing MJ. And then it turned out, no, the weird stalker guy had like abducted her and she wasn't dead. But then her and Peter are estranged. And so JMS did this masterful job of getting Peter and MJ back together. Like, I remember reading this, and I was very, I was a young adult, if I'm remembering correctly. No, I take that back. I was still in high school. Because I'm forgetting, because the 9/11 issue was part of the JMS John Romita Jr. run. So I'm like, 15, 16, 17, somewhere in that neighborhood, reading these stories. And man, I was so emotionally invested in Peter getting back with MJ. And every time I think back to that, I think, fuck you, Marvel. You're so full of shit when you act like someone young is not going to want to read Spider-Man because he has a wife or because he has a stable girlfriend. Like, you're full of shit. It's like I was a kid reading this, and I was absolutely invested in seeing MJ and Peter get back together. Because whether someone like Quesada, who's been, a fan for way longer than I've even been alive, no matter how much his memories matter of Gwen and that golden era of Spider-Man, they did everything they could to make Peter and MJ a thing. They were so thorough and successful at the Spider marriage being cemented that it is how people think of them all these years later. And the fact that other media reinforces this idea, look at the movies. Even though she's technically not Mary Jane, you've still got MJ and Peter with Tom Holland and Zendaya, right? So I think it's so dumb that Marvel keeps fighting against correcting this. So, JMS coming back to do a mini-series, okay, I mean, that might be good, but Marvel has a Spider-Man problem. And if sub 50,000 copies a month doesn't signal to you that there's a problem, you're a problem. I'm sorry, I don't know what else to tell you. It's not good. That the premier Marvel comic is not so premier. It's become incredibly niche. 48,000 people, that's like a good baseball game attendance. Like, you can't even get 100,000 people to read Amazing Spider-Man? And you don't think that maybe it's because of the dearth of quality? What else do you call it? I know I'm not excited. I haven't been excited for Amazing Spider-Man in years. I read it because it's the book I've read since I was a kid, and I just decided, you know what? This one is I hate this term, but this one's my ride and die, okay? I've dropped other books that I loved, all right? Like Fantastic Four. My love for FF started with Mark Waid, Mike Wieringo, the 10-cent issue that they did. I think it was to coincide with one of the anniversaries of the team. They sold it for 10 cents, like the first issue cost or whatever. And I bought that issue, and I was like, wow, this is written really cool. The art's really good. I've always liked the Fantastic Four, but like this feels like a good starting point for me. And I was off to the races. I collected FF all the way up to part of the Hickman run. For whatever reason, Hickman lost me a little bit. I have since gone back and reread the Hickman stuff. Oh, I have a fun story about this. Another segue. I have a variant that I don't know who signed it, But I worked at a comic shop, and it was when they said that Johnny was going to die during the Hickman run. I told my boss, I said, I want one of those polybag copies. Like, I haven't gotten the series in a while, but I want that. So she said, sure, I'll set it aside for you. I get to work. I used to run the shop on Sunday, so it's Sunday. It's pretty early. There's nobody really around. So I grab the issue and I open it. And I carefully open the poly bag because I didn't want to get rid of it, right? I still have the poly bag. I take it out and it says it's a variant edition. But the cover didn't look any different than the standard cover, so I was confused. And then I look at it again and there's a silver squiggle on there. So it was one of those, hidden variants I think that they didn't announce. And one of the creators, I don't know who, signed it. I think it might have been Epting because it's a pretty small squiggle. I feel like if it was Hickman, it would be bigger. Should probably research it, but one of my prized possessions. I remember just being like, oh, wow, like, never had anything like this happen to me. This is so cool. Anyway, you can see I love Fantastic Four, but my bullshit tolerance only goes so far. And when Dan Slott showed up and fucked everything, I was like, I'm done. Okay? I'm not reading his weirdo version of the team that's infused with his modern day sensibilities. I don't want it. And so I dropped it. And that's how a lot of people have been with Marvel and DC, where the content becomes so off-putting, so politically infused, and, the message is everywhere. I'm just like, no, I don't want to tolerate this. I'm not giving it my money. However, I love Spidey. It's my first love of comics. So I've been way more tolerant with that, even though there's been plenty of stuff that has pissed me off. So, the Zeb Wells run, just call it what it was. It was shit. It sucked, okay? Zeb Wells' run sucked. And somehow he's the guy that's handling the Batman Deadpool team up. Like, you have that guy handling... Why? Because he attached his name to the credits of the Deadpool Wolverine movie? I'm sorry, but he sucks. He doesn't produce comics I want to read. He has done some stuff in the past that was good. But his run on Spidey was so shitty, I don't feel like reading anything from Zeb Wells for a while. You go away. Alright, you go do whatever. Go do some indie comic or whatever, or some Hollywood project that I can ignore. I'm not interested in your Batman Deadpool comic. The only reason I might pick it up is because Greg Capullo is drawing it. And that's absolutely it. And that's if I open it up and I'm not immediately just like, yep, this really sucks because Zeb Wells not a good writer anymore. We'll see. Anyway, my point is we went from that mediocre Wells run to now we have Joe Kelly. And I like Joe Kelly a lot. His Deadpool run was like, that's a seminal run for me. Very formative. I read that as a kid. Probably shouldn't have. Very dark in spots. But I like Joe Kelly. I think he's a very competent writer. I'm not digging his Spider-Man run so far very much. Like, it's like, whatever. And now we're going to have 2 Spider-Men split. I don't know. It sounds dumb. It's just like, when's the last time anybody was excited for Spider-Man? When's the last time you could point at a story and just be like, this absolutely knocked my socks off? I think it was JMS's run, if I'm being honest. JMS's run was very good up until Sins Past. And then probably the Other. That was definitely polarizing. Does anybody remember the Other? See, this is what I was talking about. I get frustrated with the channels. I think I'm losing my train of thought there a little bit. It's like they don't remember any of this stuff. And I know that, like, Gary and Az, it's clear that their love was, like, especially in the 80s and 90s. I know they were still reading stuff in the 2000s, but see, for me, I read through the 90s, and my, like, the biggest, most in-tune chunk of my collecting, however, was the 2000s. Because at that point, I'm out of high school, I have a job, I have disposable income, I'm collecting hardcore, but it's also a renaissance point. Like, I don't, and that's where I think maybe these guys don't agree, but if you're around my age, maybe, you understand that era with Bendis, Miller, Brubaker, Matt Fraction had some good stuff in there. Who was another one? Brian K. Vaughan, Jeff Johns. That whole period was nuts, okay? So I'm going to dedicate an episode to this at some point. Another talking point I know that these guys wouldn't probably agree with, but as far as I'm concerned, the reason you have the MCU and you have the comic book industry, you know, being what it is right now it's tapering off, obviously, but my point is Joe Quesada showed up and saved Marvel. If you don't understand why, I don't know what to tell you, but he did. The Marvel Knights line is what led to him becoming editor-in-chief, because he took fucking Inhumans and side characters like Black Panther and turned them into on-fire mega hits. Black Panther was an enormous hit when it came out. His Daredevil run needs no introduction. The Guardian Devil arc, incredible. That was my introduction to Daredevil. Inhumans by Paul Jenkins and Jay Lee. I think it won an Eisner Award. I actually reread that recently. I have thoughts on it, but it was hugely popular at the time when it came out. This led to him becoming editor-in-chief. And from there, you got the Ultimate Universe and a bunch of other stuff. Like, Quesada was important. And so I remember all of this stuff as I'm looking, and you had stories like, Moreland and, again, Peter and MJ getting together. All of that really was just electric. And there, again, there were a few road bumps, right? The Other, that's when Peter died. Okay, I think that was the first big Peter died story. And then he's in a cocoon, and then he comes out. And do you remember what the point of that was? The Other was to make him more in line with movie Spider-Man, because they gave him organic web shooters. And he had a couple other things, too. He had night vision that spiders have. He could feel vibrations through his webs. And then he had those stinger things that could come out of his wrist, which are pretty gross. That was all the Other, right? That was polarizing. But, the only real true misfire of JMS was, like I said, it was Sins Past. And then you want to blame him at least in part for One More Day. I get it. But those are the two things. But otherwise, that run was incredible. And I get sad, for one thing, when I see that and think of, how good we used to have it with Spider-Man, and we don't have any good stories anymore. But I also look at these people reporting on it, and I'm like, you guys, don't seem to remember any of these things. Were you reading? Were you paying attention to any of it? It's like, how could you not? It's like, Bendis was on fire at that point, okay? He comes on his Daredevil run, out, right? Where he reveals Matt Murdock's identity to the real world. An incredible run. This motherfucker got away with not putting Matt in a Daredevil costume for wasn't it over a year? Because there's the 8-issue Echo arc where, I'm sorry, I just tuned out. I was like, oh, Bendis is gone. I don't care. I'm not reading this David Mack bullshit. I don't like Echo. Boring. So that went for, I believe, 8 issues. And then Bendis comes back, and I remember my buddy Justin, we were reading the comic together at this point. It's the issue where Matt is on the front and he's holding his stick like a samurai sword. I think it's like a white cover. That issue was so badass. And he fights all those Yakuza dudes. They're all amped up on MGH, right? So mutant growth hormone. And he beats the shit out of all of them with just his walking stick. No one cared that Matt wasn't in his costume, but I guess someone at some point wrote a letter and was just like, when are we going to see Daredevil, actually as Daredevil again? Mar was like, oh yeah, that's a thing. You had Bendis doing that, his Ultimate Spider-Man work, his New Avengers run. You had the Ultimates with Miller, right? You had Brubaker reinventing Captain America. You get Bucky. Just on and on. All these great things. And then across the aisle, you have DC. It got me to read DC at that point. I was just like, I can't ignore this Green Lantern stuff, okay? This Jeff Johns, Ethan Van Sciver. These are some pretty cool-looking comics. I think I gotta get involved. And then you got Jeff Loeb doing the Superman Batman book. You have Batman Hush. I'm sorry, guys. I realize maybe I'm bouncing around a little bit. I know I said this is the Spider-Man segment, but it goes hand in hand. Like, I had thoughts listening to Wes. I'm upset about Spider-Man, but I'm also upset that more people who are doing the thing that I'm poorly trying to do, talking about the comics industry, it's like, how come none of you talk about any of this stuff? I don't get it. Where were you? Where were you 2004? I know where I was. I was at the comic shop picking up Daredevil, picking up Ultimate Spider-Man, picking up Captain America. I was picking up like almost every book from both publishers at one point. When they did the God, what was it? It was a time leap, I believe they did after Infinite Crisis. And that's to say nothing of Infinite Crisis. What an incredible book. You have Jeff Johns. You have him with Jorge, not Jorge Jimenez. I'm forgetting his name. It's the other, Phil Jimenez. And then I believe Jerry or Gary Ordway. And I think they even got a little bit of George Perez in there. Don't quote me. I'm forgetting. It's been a minute since I've read Infinite Crisis. But what an incredible period of time. And, you know, I'm listening to these guys talk, and I'm just like, you guys, sometimes I'm just like, that's not how it went. That's not the story. You're missing all these great runs, and you act like the last time anything was good was, like, you know, Nightfall. Like, there was a lot of really good stuff, okay? So anyway, I guess maybe this is a long-winded, rambling way of saying that, one, fix Spider-Man. It's not hard. Go back to basics. Undo one more day. Move the fuck on, okay? Fire Nick Lowe. Get him the fuck out of there. He's been there way too long. You need new blood. And frankly, get rid of Tom Brevoort. In fact, I would say gut the entire editorial team. Get those guys out of there. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. It's clear that the message is the thing. And that is one area where I think when I'm listening to these guys talk, they don't really emphasize it enough. It's like they act like, I don't know why they can't get it right. They can get it right. They know what they could do. They don't want to do it. Because it reinforces, quote unquote, things that they are ideologically opposed to. And they're either being told by their own superiors that they have to downplay those elements because modern day politics, or they're just a true believer that is inclined to do that anyway. But however you look at it, they're not that stupid. They know what they're doing isn't popular with many people. But if you're trying to socially reprogram somebody, you don't care so much about being a crowd pleaser. You care about, how do I get you to read this and just accept that this is how it is. That means you just keep smashing your head against the wall. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, well, then you just don't get your comics anymore. That's what we're dealing with. But in the process of discussing this, I do find it frustrating when it's like, let's get these little details right. You know, let's get it right that John Romita Jr. didn't draw Back in Black. That was Ron Garney. Okay, like. But it's a nitpick, man. You know, Wes is covering, like, every book. I ain't covering every book. I have a lot of respect for what Wes does. This is just a hyper-nerd nitpick, okay? But anyway, I think I have talked enough for the night. So let's start to wrap this up. I have continued to mention, I have, plans. I wanted this to be a Midnight Burial episode, but I do think we're going to start to get smaller, little podcast, broadcasts, whatever you want to call it, talking about maybe a single subject or a single bit of news. That might be where I start to introduce some of the video content. We will see. It ain't the easiest thing to do, people. For one thing, putting your fat face on camera isn't all that fun, but putting together all the video footage too, it takes time. It takes thought. I am a one-man team. There's only so much I can do when I'm also grading a bunch of kids' work too. So, bear with me. I will try not to be so sporadic. I know I've said that before. It's been a few weeks since the last episode. I get it. But I'm doing my best. All right, so I will continue to try to entertain you with my complaining. Uh, and yeah, keep your eyes peeled. I really do want to talk about Casada and the Marvel Knights and all that. Just that impact that it had, because it was big, you know. But yeah, Spidey, my God, 48,000 copies. Again, that's a rumor, right? That's a guy Wes spoke to. We don't know if it's true, but I don't have any difficulty believing it. It's like most shops don't order a ton of wall copies of any comic these days. I know that when I go into the shops I go into, Spidey's one of the books that there usually is not a ton of copies on the wall. And I don't know if it's because it's just selling out instantly or if it's because they only order a few copies. But if we're at 48,000 per month, that's panic mode as far as I'm concerned. It's like that's the premier comic, for Marvel. You've got to make it work. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, one last thing. Bonus topic. This is an oldie, but I wanted to discuss it. White Black Panther. All right. I will not delve too much into it. The only thing I wanted to touch on, just because I thought it was cool, was it's Christopher Priest writing, okay? It is, oh my God. All right, hold on. Pause, pause, pause. All right, so for one thing, mispronunciation of this character's name. It's Katama, okay? It doesn't look like that's how it's spelled. It's Ketema, but it's pronounced Katama, okay? And this is in The World to Come. So it's a Marvel Knights book. I was talking about that earlier, right? So it's like a mini series, but it's old. And this is where I was a little disappointed, but I'll explain why. Christopher Priest said that it was Joe Q's idea, and he's like, "We got to do this. We got an anniversary coming up. I think the second Black Panther movie was coming out, something like that." And the story's been in the can for a while, but Joe Quesada is notoriously slow. Like, if Jim Lee is slow, Joe Quesada is another magnitude of slow by comparison. Now, this is in respect to he had a lot of work he was doing. That's the excuse. All right, you can fight with me, whatever. Maybe you have opinions and really do think Joe Quesada is just slow. I mean, when he was doing Daredevil, he had a little trouble with doing the monthly. I don't know. Anyway, my point is, this story has been kicking around. It's finally coming out. And all I could think was, man, this feels like a flashback to the time when the first Hush came out. Now, this story is nowhere near as timeless at all, but at the time, Ultimate Spider-Man was in its prime, and they were leading into a crossover that they were calling the Ultimate Six, and it was the ultimate version of the Sinister Six. The first chapter of that, like the prelude to that story, and the interlude chapter of Hush, both came out the same month in the same issue of Wizard. So if you remember Wizard magazine from back in the day, that was where you got your comic book news, right? Wizard got both those stories, and damn, it was so cool. Like, again, this is both publishers really firing on all cylinders. So it was Bendis and Quesada, and then you had Loeb and Lee. And here we are all these years later, and we've got Hush 2 coming out, and it's Loeb and Lee. And in my brain, I was thinking it'd be so funny if it was like Quesada seeing Jim Lee doing a monthly, and he's like, "Oh, I gotta try to do a monthly. If Jim's doing a monthly, I gotta get some monthly work out there." The timing, coincidentally, has worked out that that's the way it is, but that's not, again, it's an old story. But just seeing both those books on the shelves has been nice. I've mentioned before, I don't really agree with your boy Zach and his kind of bullshit he takes on other members of the comic news community talking about the terrible state of certain things. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of bullshit going on in the industry still. I don't know why there's this resistance to acknowledging it, being honest about it, and just saying, yeah, there's some garbage. But things are a little better. I can say that like when I was reading World to Come, I was actually like digging it. I was like, if anyone's gonna make white Black Panther work, it's Christopher fucking Priest. Okay, he is the quintessential Black Panther writer. His version of T'Challa was one of my favorite things I'd ever read as a kid. His remember when he came on, his thing was that he established that T'Challa joined the Avengers to spy on them. Because he was like, who are all these superpowered weirdos? I better keep an eye on them. And that was kind of controversial at the time, but it's a cool story. It's like, yeah, I mean, not every hero has to have the same motivations. He's a king, he's ruling his country. His concerns are a lot different than Tony Stark's. Great stuff. There's a particular line that stood out to this day. It was issue 11, I think, or 12 of Black Panther, where Priest has one of the Dora Milaje. It's a couple of girls, and you know they're young, they're like teenagers, and Everett is talking to T'Challa, and T'Challa just kind of bit off the head of one of the girls. He's like, "Don't you think you were being kind of hard on her?" And he's like, "Yes, but you know, as the adult, as her king, it's my duty to correct her." Christopher Priest's dialogue is so good in the Black Panther run, and like that, there's this regal nature to T'Challa that he conveys with little lines like that, and that was one that stood out to me. Again, as a kid, I was totally a teenager reading that, and yet I could totally identify with and understand where T'Challa was coming from. I'm telling you, man, these bullshit excuses that some of these editors give, I'm just like, do any of you know anyone who's actually young? Do you remember being young? Like, I don't get the disconnect. Anyway, like I said, been talking for a while. Maybe we'll get into White Black Panther in the next installment. I think the next issue is either out or coming out, so maybe we'll discuss it then. But those were the two main topics. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I need to go to sleep. Goodbye.